Fabiano destroys Hikaru. Queen f6. 7 brilliant games by Fabiano Caruana. Look at this game. Fabiano with the white pieces. Do you see the first brilliancy of this game? Rook to e7. Yes, and you threaten to take this pawn. And then it's game over basically. But what if you just take the rook? Well, then there's another brilliancy. Do you see it? Well, bishop to a6. And you're probably wondering, well, you can just take it, right? Well, then there's a checkmate over here. But what if you don't take the bishop at all? Well, then you threaten checkmate and you cannot prevent it as black. And then let's go to this game. Caruana is already in a huge attack, but he has a mate in 4. Do you see the winning move? Knight to f1. What? This is a crazy move. First we think, what if we take it? Well, we will take a look at it, but first, what if you don't take? What if you play rook to e2, for example? Well, then you play another brilliant move. You take the knight, check. The king takes, and then what? How do you get in? Well, you sacrifice another rook. If the king takes, then you come in with the check. The king has to slide aside. Another check. The king has to take the knight. And this is a checkmate. The king cannot escape. But what if you don't take the rook? Well, if you move your king forward, then you have a check here. And you think you're escaping, but this knight covers the escape route. So this is a check. The king goes back and you sacrifice another rook. It looks like Fabiano has like 5 rooks in this game. Takes, check, and the same mating pattern. But what happens if you actually take the knight? Takes, then you take the knight, king takes. But now, instead of sacrificing another rook, because that's your second attacking piece, you need it, you bring in the queen and the king is in a mating net. And you cannot prevent it, and after f3, you give a check, king comes forward, checkmate. Here, Fabiano is on the attack with the queen, the knight and the rook. And this pawn is placed beautifully. First, Fabiano decides to defend the pawn, and when the queen is attacked, there is a mate in 2 on the board. Do you see it? Because this is not easy to find. Well, it's a queen sacrifice on f1. What a brilliant move. You have to take it, because otherwise you're checkmated. So you have to take it. But did you see the winning move in this position? Checkmate! Here Caruana plays against a 2700 rated player, Ivan Saric, a super strong grandmaster, but he simply humiliates him. In this position, black is super active. What about the queen, the knight, the rook, the bishop, all in position to checkmate white's king at some point. But Caruana is first. But do you see the winning move? Rook takes g5. If you take the rook, then what? Is probably what you're thinking. Well, there is another rook sack, because Fabiano doesn't like his rooks. Check. And when you take, you slide in the knight, check, and you win the queen. And this is a winning endgame. So that's what Saric saw, and therefore he played king to f6. But this is a mate in 3. 1, check, 2, check. Checkmate. In this position, white decides to castle, attacking the bishop, and this looks all fine for white. But Fabiano knows that is not the case and threatens checkmate on c2. You have to prevent it, of course. White slides his rook forward, and now white is threatening a checkmate here, but the queen is defending here. That also means that the queen is tied to this row, and that's what Fabiano doesn't want, and therefore he plays g6. Now his queen is free to go anywhere. What if white played h5 in this position? Well, then there's a beautiful sacrifice on a3. Again, a rook sacrifice. Takes, and then you slide in the queen. And you threaten a checkmate over here. So you have to move away the rook to create some breathing room. But now you can take the rook. And if you take with the rook, then you give a checkmate on the back rank. And if you take with the queen, that is also winning. Rook to d8, preventing the king to escape. Now the king has to move aside, you give a check, the king goes back, and then there's a check here. If the king goes here, this is a checkmate. So you have to move in between the queen, and you take the rook, and now you will also win queen. End the game. But that's not what white did. White played queen to g4 in this position. But then there's another brilliancy. Queen to c4. Not sacrificing a rook, but a queen. If you take it, then there's a checkmate on the back rank again. So white played the move h5, trying to attack, but now you sacrifice the rook anyway. And if you take back, then the queen comes in, threatening checkmate again. And after rook h2, you prevent the king from escaping and there's no way to protect the checkmate. In this game it's Caruana to move and he takes the pawn on f7. Brilliant move! You have to take it, otherwise you're in a lost position. The king comes forward and now how do you continue? It's not that easy unless you've seen this move. Another brilliant move. I'm Mr. X, and do you like this video? Make sure to subscribe. And like I said, Caruana doesn't like his rooks. Rook e6. If you take it with a king, well then it's your checkmate. Have you seen the checkmate? Probably not, because it's a long sequence. Because you give a check here, and if you go forward, then you give a check on the h5 square. The pawn has to come in. Now you can come from the back side of the king. You give a check on f2, the knight has to move in between. You slide in the bishop, and the king has only this square to go to. And then black is super weak on the white squares. So you give another check on the white square, and when the king goes here, you give a check and eventually a checkmate. And black saw all of that and decided to play the move knight to c5, attacking the rook. And now Caruana takes the bishop. Again, he doesn't like his rook, because you can simply take the rook, but this rook is pinned to the queen. Remember that. And this king is completely in the open. So now you give a check on f4, and now you threaten to take the rook. So you have to protect the rook. But it means that Caruana now can bring in another attacker into the game, namely the rook. Rook to e1. You have to move aside, keep on protecting this rook, but black remains weak on the white squares and you give a check here. When you put in between the bishop, you slide in the queen with a check, the knight comes in between, and now you finally take the rook. Black captures the bishop. And do you see the winning move? And watch out, there is some back rank stuff going on here. But Caruana doesn't care and takes the knight. And if you think, well, then I can give you a checkmate on the back rank. No, because you can put in the rook with a check. And if you go aside with the king, then your queen hangs. So that's not the right move. So instead, black took the rook, but now you can take the bishop. And you need to protect the queen. So you have to go forward, and then you take the queen, and you win the rook. And you're a bishop up. In this game, Fabiano plays none less than Hikaru Nakamura. And Fabiano destroys Hikaru. How? Well, Hikaru brings in the knight in this knight off. Fabiano takes the pawn, but now Nakamura thinks this pawn is hanging. Takes the pawn, and Fabiano takes the knight. But he overlooked a fork with the pawn. Or did he? Let's see what happens. Hikaru moves in the pawn, and then Fabiano played the brilliant move. Queen f6. You're probably thinking, what is going on here? Because you sacrifice your queen. Well, you have to take it, of course, and then you slide in the other knight, attacking the queen with a fork and also the bishop. So you have to protect the bishop, and now this knight is still under attack, so you slide it in. And although Nakamura has a queen for 2 knights, white is so much more active. Look at these knights, a bishop, the rook. This rook will be active at some point. This is a winning position for white. And after rook b8, Caruana takes the bishop. You have to take the knight and then you slide in the rook. See how this rook entered the game. Nakamura puts the bishop in between. And now Caruana brings in another attacker. The other rook to d1. And look how strong this knight is. How strong these rooks are. This bishop will join the game at some point. And this went on for a while, but Fabiano went on to win this game. What a brilliant queen sacrifice.